Howdy, y'all. Welcome to our first campus sustainability talk. We're so glad to have you here. Our intern talks are take place during Campus Sustainability Month to highlight different niches and topics that our interns are interested in sharing with the community and campus about. So we're super excited to have y'all here today. If you could take a minute, if you haven't already, to sign in using this QR code. This is just to see who's coming to our events and how to better engage the campus with our office. So we have a great presentation today presented by Bailey, Faye, and Irissa. It'll be on rivers and rights, Indigenous rights, and spiritual resilience. This discussion dives into historical Indigenous cultural practices and current disparities in resource rights. Indigenous communities played a significant role in global history, yet lack representation and authorization in research and governance, even on their ancestral lands. Join us as we explore the importance of Indigenous stewardship and inclusion in climate action initiatives. Just some space setting for today. We are recording this, so people who weren't able to join live can watch it later on our YouTube. So if you're uncomfortable with that, feel free to turn off your camera. So if you have any friends who you think would be really interested in this talk but weren't able to make it today, you can direct them to our YouTube, or if you're wanting to watch later. There's also going to be a live transcript, so if you turn on the captions in your Zoom, you'll be able to see it happen in real time. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. This is for questions for our presenters on what they have shared with us today, but also general questions about the office, because we're about to get into some really fun stuff that we'll be hosting this month. So you can type it in the chat and we'll save it to answer till the end, or you can just save it for yourself and ask us at the end. So, being here today is one way to earn code words into our grand prize giveaway. You'll get to earn 5 code words today, which translates into 5 entries for our grand prize giveaway. They'll be revealed on slides, or one of our presenters will say them, or they will be typed in the chat. So be sure to be paying attention to write all those down. You can keep track of these code words throughout the month and submit them in one email to sustainability@tamu.edu by November 2nd to be entered into our grand prize giveaway. You can see all of our prize details, rules, and entry options at that link below, but I'll get into some of the other ways that you can earn code words. These are some of our prizes. I think they're really wonderful. The 250 tuition scholarship is very popular. I personally like the hydroponic gardening system, just because I love to garden and I think that's a really cool prize. So a lot of really wonderful prizes that you could win, very sustainability oriented. Just want to highlight our presenters that are coming up next. These are additional ways to earn code words. You'll earn 5 by attending live, and you can earn 1 to 2 by watching on YouTube later. So if your friends weren't able to make it, they can still earn some code words. Our next talk is coming up on October 20th at 10:30 a.m., presented by Kaylin and Logan on Is climate change making us sicker? This discussion talks about how the planet is getting warmer and natural disasters are occurring more frequently with greater intensity. And does this translate to higher disease outbreaks? So we'll be discussing the impact of global warming on the spread of infectious disease during this talk. Our final talk of the month is The Missing Piece, Key Conservation Knowledge Lies Within Indigenous Languages, presented by Hester and Cameron on October 29th at 10:30 a.m. By overlooking Indigenous languages in efforts to address environmental challenges, we risk losing fundamental knowledge that could guide solutions to the climate crisis. Because English is the dominant language of research, the wealth of wisdom and ecological understanding embedded in Indigenous languages are often lost in translation, where it might have otherwise been pivotal towards climate change innovations. This discussion will highlight the importance of preserving more languages and preserving natural native languages that have passed down centuries of knowledge about the natural world. So definitely come and join us for those talks as well. Our biggest event of the semester is Campus Sustainability Day, which is happening 1 week away from today, October 15th, 10 to 1 on Ritter Plaza. You can come and earn more code words for the grand prize giveaway. You'll get to interact with our interns and see all the wonderful things that they'll be teaching about and all the games and activities. We'll also have some other organizations and offices engaging with you on how they incorporate sustainability into what they do every day. So definitely come out. There's rumors that Rev will be attending. So be sure to come get pictures with Rev and to learn more about sustainability and to have fun. You'll also get to win some awesome merch. So many reasons to get involved. Also wanted to highlight that our internship applications have opened. So if you're wanting to do amazing work like presenting on a sustainability topic you're super passionate about to campus, or tabling at Campus Sustainability Day, leading workshops, making reels, doing a lot of fun sustainability outreach and education initiatives, you should definitely apply. We have 8 internships available every semester. It's on campus. We encourage all majors to apply because we want to encourage everyone from different viewpoints and different skill sets to get involved. Sustainability is something that should involve everyone from all different career paths. It's only open to undergraduate students, and be sure to get your application in by November 10th. You can use this link to apply. It's also posted in the link tree on our Instagram. So there's a link in there that takes you directly to that page. Thank you again so much for joining us in Campus Sustainability Month. Be sure to attend our other chats, Campus Sustainability Day. Check out our internship applications for more ways to get involved with us. I'm now going to pass it over to our wonderful presenters.
Howdy, I'm Irisa Vera.
I'm Faye Merritt.
And I'm Bailey Shaw.
First, we would like to thank everyone for joining our talk this morning. Today, we'll be discussing the intersection of rivers and rights by examining Indigenous water rights and spiritual resilience within the present climate crisis. Our first code word today is native.
Many Indigenous people view the land as ancestral. The land has been here before humans, and for all we know, it's going to be here after. Indigenous people believe that we have a lot to learn from the land and that we can do this by listening to it. The book Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmer covers this in chapter 2. Kimmer talks about her family and the way that they grew up in the land that they were on. She said that they built a close relationship with the pecan trees. They believe that the pecan trees were communicating due to the mass seeding. Through scientific research, it's actually been proven true. It is shown that trees communicate through the releasing of pheromones. Indigenous people have known this for a long time. Often it's the case that Indigenous people know more about the land due to their close relationship with it, which is why they should be given more of a say in government. When English settlers came in, they did not understand the land as well as Indigenous people, which could be seen through the monoculture of crops, which was extremely unsustainable and led to the destruction of a lot of the land. Indigenous culture is often rooted in respect for the land and the resources provided by the environment. In an article published by the United Nations, it was shown that since Indigenous culture is typically extremely localized and community-based, these people are the first to notice implications of climate change. It is unfair that they are not included in the environmental and social policy framework. Including Indigenous people into environmental justice and using their knowledge to aid in environmental regulation and policy is very important to reach a climate solution. It has been shown that majority of Indigenous populations already have solutions and plans to live well and cohesively with the world, and they are unhappy with the current environmental policy outside of their areas. Studies have shown that 25% of land and ecosystems in the world managed by Indigenous people are in better health than all lands managed outside of Indigenous land. Indigenous environmental justice recognizes non-human beings of the earth as part of their goals too. This includes water. Indigenous environmental justice recognizes water as a living being with duties and responsibilities that ensure a healthy ecosystem. When it comes to Indigenous spiritual connection to water, it is also viewed as a tie to ancestry. Kelsey Leonard, member of the Shinnecock Indian Nation, recalls her childhood lessons and mentions that she was taught that water is alive, it hears, and it holds memories. Water is life. Water provided for us in the womb, and it continues to provide for humans as a crucial necessity. Leonard mentions a prophecy that her grandmother shared with her, saying that one day an ounce of water would cost more than an ounce of gold. This prophecy is becoming increasingly true. The struggle to water rights is becoming a major issue all over the world, and is an issue that tribes are all too familiar with. When something so sacred, such as water, is taken away from the land, it has the same spiritual effect as taking away a part of their heritage and ancestry. This is why it's crucial to grant water personhood in order to solve water injustice. Leonard argues that giving water personhood would grant water the right to exist, flourish, and naturally evolve. This will also grant water protection from pollutants, human-caused climate impacts, and man-made contamination. This would also diminish the exclusive water ownership and allow water to be the natural substance belonging only to itself and the land again. This would end the injustice of unequal water rights. We live in a world today where corporations have been granted personhood, so what's stopping us from granting the water or the life that is water personhood as well?
As Faye mentioned, Indigenous communities have a long-standing history of natural resource stewardship. Yet their contributions and knowledge lack global recognition and have been silenced by colonialism, which has resulted in exclusion and injustices. Western expansion in North America not only contributed to mass ecological disturbances, but also displaced thousands of natives from their rightful homes and livelihood sources. The New World was not in fact new, as there were long-standing communities and ecosystems thriving prior to colonization. The landscape of our continent has been altered to fit Western worldviews of taking and gaining, as opposed to caring and giving. In comparing worldview stances, Shoshone Nation Chairman Darren Perry states the following: Western worldviews are often scientific and skeptical, often requiring proof as a basis of belief, or that there is only one truth, science or law, in the Western world. However, Indigenous worldviews are often based on spiritual teachings and experiences. As Perry describes, truths are dependent upon individual experiences, and that the Earth's resources are sacred and require careful use. These teachings also reinforce an obligation in preserving resources for the benefit of future generations. Western-based worldviews of extracting and depleting the land or owning and overusing resources have become ingrained in today's larger society, fueling trends based in overconsumption and personal gain. In order to progress against today's climate crisis, we can integrate Indigenous knowledge and decision-making processes to heal our Earth. By analyzing these worldviews side by side, one question comes into mind. What would the current climate crisis look like if Indigenous peoples were included in decision-making processes in decades past? Historically, Indigenous voices have been ignored and excluded from representative bodies. Take the 1920s establishment of the Colorado River Commission, composed of delegates representing 7 river basin states with the aim of dividing river rights. Yet none of the 30 federally recognized Native American tribes within the basin were represented on the commission. Today, decades of overuse and poor management of the Colorado River has led to water scarcity in the American Southwest, which has only been fueled by extreme droughts. Across the region, the Navajo Nation has fought for accessible and safe running water. In 2010, the first settlement was reached to formalize water rights on the Colorado River for the Navajo. Both the Navajo and Hopi tribes have also requested that the Arizona government support water transfer infrastructure projects from the river to the reservations, but the requests have been declined. Today, these reservations continue to lack access to clean running water. Including affected and marginalized communities within administrative processes is critical, and authoritative bodies must recognize concerns and analyze potential impacts prior to disaster. In northern Mexico, the native Yaqui have also fought for clean and accessible water. The Independencia Aqueduct, located in Sonora, Mexico, serves to transfer water from the Yaqui River to Hermosillo. This aqueduct has been really instrumental in providing clean water to the growing city of Hermosillo, allowing more residents to have running water and to support new real estate developments. Yet the issue arises as the aqueduct diverts water belonging to the Yaqui pueblos, leaving the pueblos without clean, potable water to drink or grow their crops. This project was developed and executed without consulting Yaqui leadership on their ancestral and territorial water rights. Additionally, the pueblos have expressed numerous concerns of unsafe drinking water and the need for water treatment facilities within their communities to both the state and federal governments. Yet the Yaqui have largely been ignored as Hermosillo, an urban city, takes precedence over the agrarian pueblos. Yaqui leaders soon filed a lawsuit against the project, requesting that their rights be recognized and to halt water transfers from the river to Hermosillo. The Supreme Court of Mexico later ruled that the Yaqui must be consulted as a part of the project's environmental impact assessment, and that a new assessment be prepared in conjunction with Yaqui leaders. This conflict calls into question how Indigenous rights and the human right to water can either clash or work alongside each other. Water rights do not automatically guarantee inclusion of the marginalized and can sometimes result in exclusion. And it is absolutely necessary to understand how human rights can be infringed upon in the name of advancing greater outside interests.
So, Erissa's case study provides us with a powerful reminder of how water shapes lives, but it does bring a bigger question into the frame, which is why do some communities have to fight so hard for water access in the first place? And to answer this question, I want to zoom out and look at what water rights are and how they connect to Indigenous community struggles. So water rights are essentially the rules that say who can use water, how much, and for what purpose. And these usages can include things like drinking water, industrial purposes, irrigation for agriculture, and even recreational activities. So when thinking about water rights, it is important to remember it's not just about the resource itself, but it's about the power that comes with controlling something no one can live without. So to understand why Indigenous nations are often not the ones in control of water today, I want to look at a couple of the major systems in the United States that allocate systems that are used to allocate water. So in the East, we have what's called riparian rights, and this means that if your land touches a river, you can use the water from it so long as that use is considered reasonable. And in the West, there is a system of prior appropriation, which is often summarized as first in time, first in right, which basically means that whoever put the water to beneficial use first often still holds the strongest legal claim to it today. And beneficial use could be something like irrigating farmland, even in the 1800s, like something way far back. But the problem with both of these systems is that they were created during the eras of colonization and westward expansion, which means they were designed around settler land ownership and agricultural development, and they excluded Indigenous relationships with water when making these systems. This means that Indigenous peoples who had managed and protected water sustainably for thousands of years were largely written out of these laws because their governance systems didn't fit Western definitions of land ownership or beneficial use. As a result, many lost legal access to the very waters that sustain their communities, cultures, and ecosystems. And it's important to note that this exclusion wasn't just an oversight, it was built into the system, and it sets the stage for many of the water conflicts we're still seeing today. So why does it matter that Indigenous peoples are left out of these frameworks? It matters because water rights are not neutral. They decide who has water for crops to grow, whose taps run, and also whose voices are either heard or silenced. And in an article by Wilson et al., he has this quote that says, struggles over Indigenous water rights arise from inequities and discrimination in water governance. And I think this is a good summary that continues the same point, which is that when communities don't have recognized rights, they're left out of decisions about their own lakes, rivers, and groundwater. And it's more than just unfair, it is a continuation of colonial injustice. So even within these unequal systems, Indigenous nations have fought and won some powerful victories that continue to shape how water is managed today. And one of the earliest and probably most important was the Winners versus United States in 1908. And it started on the Fort Belknap Reservation in Montana when the settlers upstream were diverting water, which left downstream tribes without enough water for their crops or even daily use. So this is when the Supreme Court stepped in and ruled that when the federal government created reservations, it also reserved enough water to make those lands livable and productive, even if those treaties never exclusively mentioned water.
This became known as the Winter's Doctrine, and it was the first time the United States law really recognized that without water, the promises made to Indigenous peoples were empty. It also confirmed something deeply important, that Indigenous water rights are inherent. They come from their connection to the land itself and not from a government's permission. Over a century later, the Winter's Doctrine is still the backbone for resolving water disputes across the West. And we still see those principles from the Winter's Doctrine being put into action. For example, in 2013, the Klamath Tribes of Oregon won a major legal battle reaffirming their time immemorial rights to protect the rivers and fish that are central to their culture. This just meant that when drought hit, the ruling gave the tribes authority to limit non-Indigenous irrigation in order to keep enough water for the quam and koptu, which are two sacred fish species. And this is a powerful reminder that these rights aren't just symbolic, they can be enforced in real, tangible ways that protect both ecosystems and cultural survival. And then there are also victories that come not from courtrooms, but from negotiation. And one of the most significant is the Gila River Indian Community Settlement in Arizona. After decades of litigation, the community finally regained rights to the water from the Colorado River, and these flows had been diverted away for generations. And this agreement didn't just restore access to water, but it opened the doors for new agricultural projects, economic growth, and environmental restoration of their lands. These victories, from Winters to the Klamath to the Gila River, show that progress is possible. They prove that Indigenous nations aren't just fighting to be recognized, they're actively reshaping the legal and cultural landscape of water in North America. And every win, whether it's in the courtroom or through collaboration, moves us closer to a future where water rights truly means water justice. So while water rights may sound technical, they're really about survival, justice, and dignity. They shape who thrives and who is excluded. And that brings us back to the Indigenous communities today, because their fights for water are not only legal battles, but they're about protecting culture, sovereignty, and future generations. And we have our last code word for today. And this is a list of our sources and references. And yeah, thank you for tuning in and listening. If you have any questions, we'll try our best to answer them.
Yay, thanks y'all. That was really informative, really wonderful. I learned a lot. I'm sure everyone did. We'll now open the floor for a Q&A. You're welcome to unmute and ask your question out loud, or you can answer, type a question in the chat. All right, so we have our first question. What do you think is a significant challenge to greater acceptance of Indigenous knowledge?
I think in Westernization, like Arissa said, a lot of people view Indigenous knowledge as more of a spiritual thing than something that's scientifically based. But as I said with chapter 2 from Braiding Sweetgrass, often these spiritual beliefs are based in science, like the mass seeding was actually based in the releasing of pheromones. But I think that's just a Western ideology is that Indigenous people don't have like scientific based beliefs.
Irisa, did you want to add on before we move on to the next question? I just saw you unmuted.
I was gonna get ready to answer the second question. It says, how do y'all believe federal funding changes affect regulation on water use slash water rights? And do you believe the role of Indigenous communities in this conversation are going to drastically change in the future? So as I mentioned previously, where the Navajo Nation and the Hopi requested the Arizona government to fund infrastructure projects diverting water from the Colorado River to their reservations, I think that federal funding changes likely, when with funding cuts, that these infrastructure projects are probably also going to be more ignored, unfortunately, with less state budgets and less federal budgets to advance certain communities, it's probably going to be a greater challenge for these communities to have the access to clean water. And I do think that their role in this conversation, I am hoping that in recent years, with the way we communicate with social media and the way we communicate online is more mass and widespread, that their voices and that Indigenous communities' role in the conversation is going to be more uplifted and more prominent. I hope that answered the question, wholly.
Next question, what surprised you most in your research?
I think for me, I'll go ahead and answer this one too. And then if you guys want to join in as to what you found most surprising, I think it was really interesting with the case study in northern Mexico where there was a big fight big conflict between the Hermosillo city government with the Yaqui Pueblos that are more south in that region. So for them, it was really interesting because the city itself is advocating for their community to have running water. Meanwhile, it's kind of pushing away and ignoring who has historically had rights to that water, which is the Yaqui Pueblos. And they're also struggling with having any water infrastructure in their villages. And it was very surprising to see that the city government is kind of pushing like, hey, we're able to provide clean water to our community. This is a positive thing, but it's at the expense of the indigenous people in that area. So I think that was really surprising because um it's advancing one group of people and pitting down another group of people, and yet it's in a conflict for human rights as a whole.
I found it interesting that majority of indigenous tribes already have solutions for climate change. They just aren't able to actually act on them because of social and environmental policy framework around the world. But I thought it was interesting that most of them already have like solutions and ways to solve the issues.
Yeah, I'm just going to add off of that because I felt the same way with researching some of the victories in water rights. A lot of these nations do have solutions in place, or some of them do already have quote unquote water rights, but they're not actually being enforced or implemented. And I just thought it was, I don't know if surprising is the right word, but I thought it was just interesting to learn about how Indigenous peoples are usually discredited just because they have a different viewpoint, even though than that of Western society, even though their solutions are probably what we need right now in a time of climate change and environmental instability, I guess.
Thank you all for your questions. I think we all have gained a lot of really wonderful insights on how to move forward in this climate crisis and who to listen to and to include everyone at that table when those conversations come up. So I just wanted to give another thank you to our presenters for leading on us through their wonderful research. Thank you again so much for joining us, and we hope to see you at more Campus Sustainability Month events in October. Thank you.